Hi everyone, my name is Clara Chemtov and welcome to my lecture, Words Matter, Beating Disordered Eating in the Studio. I'm a current dance student at York University. I'm in my second year of their undergraduate BFA program. Prior to that, I completed a degree in collegiate studies at Cégep de Saint-Laurent, also in dance. And before that, I grew up dancing at my local neighborhood studio. So now that you know a bit more about me, let's get into the presentation. Today, I'll be focusing on the dance teacher's role in addressing and decreasing disordered eating tendencies among students, as well as how to promote an environment of positive body image. I'll be starting by going through a few terms and definitions, followed by how dancers are affected by diet culture, and then how teachers are involved in perpetuating diet culture, followed by how teachers can help the situation, and then how to intervene. And then I'll be capping it off with some resources for you all, and I'll be sharing my contributors. All of the information in today's presentation was informed by current and existing research and studies. It's also informed by my own personal experience as a dance student, as well as interviews with dance students, dance artists, dance educators, and dance nutritionists. First off, when I speak about healthy eating, my definition involves eating a variety of foods, a general guideline of eating when hungry and being able to stop when full. It's also eating in a way that promotes physical, mental, and emotional well-being. I'll also be talking a lot about diet culture. Diet culture is a set of external rules about how, when, what, and how much to be eating. It also involves generally basing worth off of our bodies and diets rather than who we are as people, which involves a hierarchy of bodies, meaning that according to diet culture, some bodies are better than others. Lastly, a common diet culture trope is using movement as punishment or compensation for having eaten. I also want to address that I'll be talking about disordered eating, which is characterized as an abnormal relationship with food, where you have obsessive thoughts about food, often in relation to body image and exercise. I will not, however, be addressing eating disorders, which are a psychiatric illness. Eating disorders can stem from disordered eating, hence the confusion, but what separates them is that they generally impede on normal functioning in daily activities, and they're often a protective maladaptive coping mechanism. Now to how dancers are affected by diet culture. Dancers face increased focus on bodies and nutrition. This is generally because dancers want to elevate their performance and achieve the best physical state possible, and this can lead to disordered eating, as was shown in a 2012 study. Dancers are also affected by diet culture because of the immense stereotypes that come with being a dancer and the high exposure of their bodies. In a separate 2012 study, it was shown that these factors can put dancers at a higher risk for body image disorders like body dysmorphia. Dancers also often fall prey to the idea that thinness is better because of the pervasiveness of diet culture. In yet another 2012 study, it was shown that the body expectations put on dancers can influence their diets and can force them to restrict or even starve themselves. I also wanted to touch on my own experience as a dance student. When I was 15, I decided I wanted to start training more seriously. I wanted to optimize my performance, so I started researching nutrition. Unfortunately, with a lack of support and professional guidance, I became obsessive about the rules that I was imposing on myself, and eventually down the line, this developed into anorexia nervosa. Now let's talk about how teachers might be involved. The first thing to keep in mind is that dance teachers are really influential figures in students' lives, and they're often role models. In a 2014 study, it was shown that a negative reinforcement from a dance teacher could discourage dancers on their prospects, their performance, and even their future goals. The next point I want to talk about for dance teachers is self-talk. As role models, your self-talk really matters. The way that you talk about your bodies, about nutrition, about yourself in any capacity, it can trickle down into the minds of your students and affect the way that they think about those same things. This is why I encourage all teachers to reflect on their own biases about dance bodies and dance nutrition and see if those particular ideas are somehow being reflected in their teaching style and vocabularies. In my interviews with dance students, I've come across a number of common sayings from teachers that involve food and bodies and promote them in a very negative light. I'll share a couple of examples here so that you can see what it is we're dealing with. A common one, I can see your lunch. Now this demonizes food We all know that dancers need lunch, you need constant fuel to keep up your training, and this just shows that if someone has a protruding belly, it is necessarily a bad thing. In the same vein, teachers saying, unglue your belly from your leotard. Now, this one might seem a little more innocent, but if we think about it, leotards are a skin-tight garment. Therefore, if your belly is no longer touching your leotard, it would mean that your form is now concave, which is generally unrealistic for the vast majority of the population. Another one is tone your body or tone up your muscles. Now, this puts an emphasis in musculature being all important and being mostly important because of the physical appearance aspect. One that's used very often, particularly in ballet settings, is don't stick out your behind. Now, we've probably all heard that as a way to emphasize vertical alignment, but in reality, it's not inclusive to people who, because of their genetic makeup, have a different shaped body. Another way that teachers might be inadvertently promoting diet culture and negative body image is by comparing dancers' bodies. This could look like, try to look like so-and-so. In reality, you're saying try to have the same alignment, the same movement quality, the same textures, but what we're saying is try to look like this person, which implies that this person's body is the ideal and everyone should want to look like this. Another one is when we're talking about costumes and we say everyone's costume should fit like so-and-so, when in reality, if you're putting many dancers in the same garment, it's going to look different on everybody. And this is something that we have to respect and embrace if we want to be truly body inclusive. Let's talk about what educators can do to help reverse these effects. The first one would be to champion all bodies. This is where I invite teachers to reflect on who is being cast, who is being uplifted in the space, which bodies are being used as the class example. The next one, and this one is directly related to the topic of disordered eating, would be to ensure that dancers have snack breaks and to encourage them to bring food, to bring their dinner, to bring a quick snack. Oftentimes we see long rehearsal days where you have class rehearsal with no time to eat. And I think it would be very easy to implement a 10-15 minute break where you say, dancers, sit down together and have something to eat. It's important to remain fueled. The next thing that dance teachers can do is to educate their dancers on the importance of nutrition. You can emphasize athletes and personal self-care by saying things like, it's important to take care of your body, treat it with the respect that it deserves, make sure that you're eating enough, make sure that you're eating often enough throughout the day, etc. But the important thing to keep in mind is to not give out nutrition advice. Now, a lot of teachers might do this because they've found a way of eating that works for them and they might want to share it, but if you have not personally studied in the field of dietetics, please do not give out information that you are not qualified to provide. The next thing to keep in mind is if you're going to address nutrition, to talk very sensitively. In a 2014 study, it was proven that at least 12% of dancers have eating disorders, which means that the rate of disordered eating is much higher. So if you talk to a class of dancers, you are most likely talking to a class of people who are struggling with their relationship to food. So please make sure that you're talking sensitively, talking with care, and using the most inclusive and delicate vocabulary possible. Another thing you can talk about is the stigma around eating and body image. So you can say things like, I know how hard it is to ignore the diets on social media. It can be difficult to look at yourself in the mirror, but instead of focusing on your appearance, let's focus on technique, alignment, forces of opposition, things like that. You can also talk about normalizing daily body changes. We all want to try to achieve the same results as yesterday. We want to try the same alignment, same exercises. And then it can be really disheartening to notice in the mirror that your body looks different. For example, you might be bloated, and for many different reasons, hormonal, etc., it's completely normal for our bodies to fluctuate a little bit in appearance from day to day. And you can tell that to your dancers so that they know that what they're seeing is normal and that it's not a problem that needs fixing. Next up, and probably the most important one, is to use neutral language when describing movements. Now, what does neutral language mean? It could mean a variety of things. For example, using imagery. So you can say, zip up your sweater. This could help dancers feel the connection between both sides of their abdominals and engage them. It could be, imagine energy flowing through your arms and out your fingertips. Neutral language could also mean movement-based language. So instead of straighten your knee, it could be extend your knee. Straighten your knee might seem innocent, but when we think about it, if you have a dancer with large thighs, their leg is most likely not going to look like one straight line. And so it's important to think, what does it mean to have a straight or extended knee on all different bodies? We can also be using sensation-based language, which is very powerful. It could mean feel the connection between body part A, body part B. For example, when you do this movement, maybe we can feel this muscle engage. Can you feel it? Next up, teachers can help by having resource lists on hand. Now, this list should include free online resources that have information and educational support. The list should also include local specialists in mental health and nutrition so that students have a direct link to who they can contact. And finally, you can include nationwide resources that offer virtual services, online counseling, or online education forums. To make this list the most accessible possible, it should be put in all different areas where students can look at it in confidentiality. This could mean tacking up a physical copy of the list in the bathrooms or changing rooms. It could mean putting it online in their online portal, putting it on the website under the section of dancer care. It could mean putting it in the course outline if you're part of an academic institution, all different places where students can consult it without feeling stigmatized or feeling like everyone knows that they want to look at the list. Finally, we can invite specialists for student and staff training. Since dance teachers don't have the proper education to be giving nutritional advice, why not invite a specialist who does? Invite a dance nutritionist to come speak with students, invite them to come educate faculty at your next staff meeting. All of these are very important steps, and not only do they educate everyone involved, but it also endorses the importance of nutrition and proper health. If the dancers see that the teachers think it's important to be speaking about nutrition, to be speaking about your relationship with food in your body, they'll be more likely to adopt those values for themselves and have a more positive mindset. Let's go through one of the most difficult processes, which is how to intervene if you suspect that a student is struggling with disordered eating. Now, some of the signs to look for. Changes in weight, specifically drastic changes and sudden changes in weight. Now, I do want to specify that the vast majority of people who go through disordered eating don't actually experience a change in weight, but if you see one, it's usually a telltale sign. Next up, changes in mood and attitude. If a student who has normally come in with a bubbly demeanor for days on end has now been seeming low in mood, it could also be a red flag. Another pretty obvious one is avoiding eating. If you notice consistently that during snack or dinner breaks, a student hasn't been eating or has been coming up with reasons not to be eating, there could be something more serious going on. Another one is low energy. If you're noticing that a student is having trouble getting through to the end of a class or that their energy levels seem to be dropping, this could be a sign that there are nutritional deficiencies. Finally, negative self-talk about eating and body image. If a student is particularly saying things like, oh, I don't want to put on a leotard right now, I'm so bloated, I don't want to get in front of the mirror, I shouldn't have eaten that, I should do extra bar work because I ate XYZ. This is something to look out for. Once you've noticed a few of these signs and you're still concerned that a student is experiencing disordered eating, the next step is to determine whether you should address the student directly or consult with their parents or guardian. Generally speaking, if the student is a minor, you should share your concerns with a parent or guardian. The gray zone is if the student is a mature teenager, for example, 16 or 17 years old. If you have a strong relationship with the student, and if you think that that could be beneficial, you can use your judgment and determine whether you should speak with the student or their parents. Finally, if the student is an adult, it's generally safe to say you can consult directly with them, especially if you know they're living on their own and are probably in charge of their own food situation. When you've decided to share your concerns with a student, the first thing to do is to invite them for a one-on-one conversation. It could be as simple as, hey, can I talk to you after class? The first thing to keep in mind is to check in on their overall well-being. If you target food directly and say, I think you might have disordered eating or an eating disorder, it'll make the student take a step back and be more likely to be closed off to future conversations because they might feel targeted. So instead, you can check in on how they're doing overall. You can express concern, reaffirm that they're in a safe space, and most importantly, use I statements. This way, the student will not feel attacked, will not feel targeted, and instead will feel that you are coming from a place of genuine care. So this could be, I noticed that your energy has been low lately. I'm worried that you might be feeling a lot of stress in the studio. Maybe something's going on outside. I noticed that you haven't been coming to class as your usual bubbly self. Any of these could work as a way to open up the conversation. Once the conversation has started to flow, you can ask the student if you can provide them with a resource list. This consent step is really important because students need to know that they still have agency in the way that they want to care for themselves. If they say yes, you can give it to them or offer to email it to them, and then you can ask if you can suggest specific and appropriate resources. Again, there's no specific format, but these are general guidelines that will help you have a smooth and caring conversation. Here are a couple of resources to start you off. I've shared some general international and national ones, as well as a couple of region-specific ones. So if you want to take a second and screenshot these or jot them down, go right ahead. I'd like to take a second to appreciate my contributors. So we have first all of the dance students, followed by the wonderful nutritionists who agreed to be interviewed, and then the dance educators and artists. I'd also like to highlight the students and educators who wish to remain anonymous. And finally, here are the works that I cited. That brings my presentation to a close. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and go get yourself a snack.